Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing? I skipped the just chatting screen today because, you know, might as well be my just chatting screen today. Thank you for pinning that. For some reason I couldn't pin it earlier. Here we go, now I'm big. Today we are reading Mr. Bogat's fourth book, A Kiss of Wind and Sky. Yes, fourth book in the Tales of Love and Magic series. And it's A Kiss of Wind and Sky. I'm gonna check to make sure my headphones are on. Okay, they are. But everybody can hear my campfire sound. I know that's not like a whole lot. I don't know if I should play music or not. I can't remember if I played music last stream or not. Or if it's like too distracting. I guess we'll see how it goes without it, and we can always add music. I think music is good. I kind of want magical music. There we go. Have to, of course, look for no copyright because Twitch hates me forever. Do the no lo-fi, but it's not medieval though. It's just fantasy. It's kind of medieval. It's true, it is very kind of medieval. Well, this one's kind of fantasy steampunk hybrid, but yeah. See, that's true. Apparently it's very hard to find. Yeah, Feline Fatty is in fact on the desk. He has arriveth. And we'll make room for him, so he's gonna be happy that there's no keyboard in the way or anything else. The back of his head still itches horribly. Like I like barely touched it and he's like trying to scratch it. We put his like bi-monthly dose of flea and tick medication on him and he's like I can't do it. Man. Okay, I think we might do this one. Yeah, we'll do this one. And I'll just turn it down. Okay. So, the Tales of Love and Magic series is, of course, about some very cute lesbian romances. We did A Kiss of Light and Flame, A Kiss of Death and Rebirth, and the last one was A Kiss of Iron and You. Sunny is trying to give love to the books in his own way by rubbing on the book corners. You can't do that. You must not. Do not ruin the book. He's like, but I just want to love on the spine while you're holding it. He's like, I just want to love on it a little bit. And now he's gonna make my model. He loves books. He does look. He's a bookish cat. He's a book talk cat. You know? Instead of, you know, the book talk girls, he's the book talk cat. He only likes cuddles when he wants them, and, you know, sometimes he likes violent cuddles. Like biting people's feet at night. We have to hide our toes underneath the covers every night. Because if we don't, he bites them. When you're trying to do something else. Exactly, like read a book. Read a book. And they're right, Sonny. He needs to be groomed like so bad. He's got little tufts of fur sticking out everywhere. Poor guy. He gets this way. It starts, I don't know. Every couple of weeks or so, he's got like a huge shed. And like, he's just got like tufts of fur. Like, he looks like part husky right now. Because he's got just like so many tufts of fur that sticks out. And like, he randomly does it. It's possibly, you know, we did stress him out a little bit. Because we took him to him and Lily's yearly vet appointment the other day. So he could have just been the remnants of the stressing. He was not a happy cat about going to the vet. He cried the entire way. Alright, so we're gonna start reading while his tail makes my model like glitch out. He's still rubbing. He's like, no, pet me. He's like, don't read, only pets. I'm gonna have to like carefully. Apparently, this book has never been opened. I'm gonna massage the book spine. Did you know that in order for your book spines to not be creased, there is a certain way that you should massage your book spine to get it to open without breaking the spine or creasing the edges? It helps a lot. Although I think I accidentally creased it anyway when I first opened it. I try not to crease the books, so they stay looking pretty on the shelf. But sometimes that's hard, especially with these like thin light novels. Although these come like pre-bent because Amazon sends them that way. So they're like pre-creased on the front part. I'm not sure why. Okay. So chapter 1. I think I have to sneeze. Of course I do. Like as soon as I start. Or maybe not. Okay. Lulu threw back another small glass of sweet, brownish liquid, slamming it hard on the bar. What followed was a belch, certainly not befitting a lady, or anyone possessing even a minimal amount of decency and civility. Some might even call her the finest example of how not to be a proper Estonian lady. She was pretty, sure, but her male friends would also say she was very approachable. A backhanded compliment, and one referencing the relative lack of effort she put into her appearance and perhaps her romantic interests. Emphasis on the backhanded part. She was slightly more muscled than the average Estonian lady, all bound in their corsets and squeezed into their gaudy dresses. The women of the powerful family spent hours dolling up, hoping to catch the eyes of a wind mage still unwed. There were many such establishments spread throughout Estonia, highbrow, serving the finest of clientele. Unfortunately, this wasn't one of them. The vomit, deposited by the previous patron occupying Lulu's stool, had only been mostly wiped away, and the smell lingered. The establishment brimmed with very loud, large, and ill-mannered men. Just her luck. If she preferred men, this might be the ideal place to find someone just as unrefined, as obnoxious as herself. She was here on business. They never stopped the patrons from pouring in, however. Wealthy travelers would often stop by this tavern to kick up their feet and ignore customs for a time. It was safe, cheap, and approachable. "Hey, little lady," a gravelly voice said. "Don't get very many travelers in this tavern anymore. You probably shouldn't be drinking so much." "Shove it and mind your own business," Lulu said, the smile and a wink contradicting her words. "My boyfriend just dumped me on the rail transporter right here. It's just me and my sack of gold, and I'm here to drown my sorrows like everybody else. Mind your own business." Estonia had truly become the envy of all kingdoms in matters of industry thanks to wind magic. Horseless carriages that rolled along a railway carrying passengers, food, and more. Imposing airships floating through the sky like boats in the sea. Even songs and musical instruments carried throughout giant auditoriums. Just to name a few. For most, this new way of life was entirely welcome. For others, it was difficult to adjust. The man opened his mouth, but Lulu cut him off with her impressive burping skills. Well-meaning or not, his face reddened, and he walked away. About time. She looked around, mostly in the far corners of her vision, without giving herself away, noticing many eyes were on her now. Maybe she oversold it a bit. Not even 10 heartbeats later, another man approached. This one was younger and brought a couple of wingmen with him. I couldn't help but hear your story. Mind if I buy you another drink? I'm not judgmental like Grandpa over there, nor do I have any interest in that sack of gold you mentioned. Lulu smiled and nodded to the barkeep, who promptly collected the man's coin and began filling mugs from behind the counter. He hesitated before handing the next one over to her. Don't you think you've had enough, miss? You're barely going to walk out of here as it is. Are you sure you don't need a room? Lulu gave the barkeep the finger, which he accepted as her answer. A moment later, a full drink was deposited in front of her. She immediately picked it up and spilled much of it down her shirt, swallowing a surprising portion. It was dark outside now, and sure enough, not a single other traveler had shown up to drink there. Wow, my pants are gonna look worse than my shirt if I keep up the pace. It's dark, so I'm gonna head back to the rail before they miss me. The barkeep nodded, shaking his head. Are you sure you don't want someone to walk with you? The petite brunette only batted the eyelashes, covering her sapphire blue eyes mockingly. Oh, because I'm a delicate little girl? Surely I need a big man to guide me. I'll never find the rail station. He rose both hands in defeat, offering no retort, and abruptly moved on to the next customer. Loud and obnoxious? Check. Quickly standing, Lulu stumbled, nearly falling backward over the stool she was just sitting on, before catching herself in the nick of time. Her uneven stride and drifting into random tables only added to the scene she'd already caused. Was she overselling it again? Nah. She paid close attention to those coming in and those heading out behind her. Despite the recent blow to its reputation, this tavern was still bustling with locals. With that much foot traffic, it made it impossible to tell who was following her and who was simply heading far from home that night. She had a bad habit of throwing out the good advice with the bad and going at everything her own way. Things always had a way of working out. At least, that's what she told herself. Here, listening might not have been such a bad idea. Now, here she was, staggering down dark alleys, jiggling her sack of coin as she walked to emphasize its content. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Turning down another alley, she accepted she was now so far off the actual path to her destination that she might just get lost for real. Sensing someone behind her, she stumbled over a crate and planted her face firmly into a puddle of mud. At least, she really, really hoped it was mud. She gave it a sniff to be sure. Yep, mud. Thank the gods. Huh? What you want? Here to take advantage of Estania's most finest female when she's vulnerable? She spat. Literally spat, as she rolled onto her back and looked up at the three men standing above her. Jackpot. These must be the guys she was sent here to find. Following a drunk woman down dark alleys certainly didn't lend itself to their being gentlemen, now did it? What? No. There's been a string of crime here recently against travelers, especially those using the rail, and I was also the last person to talk to you, so if anything happens to you, it'll be blamed on me and my friends. My dad's hoping to run for office, so he'll kill me if I drag him into a scandal. We're gonna make sure you make it there unharmed, shocking as that may be to you. Besides, what kind of men would we be if ignored a lady in distress? Great. Just great. An actual gentleman. Lulu sat up as though propelled by magical force. Are you serious right now? Of course, one of the other men said. My uncle owns a tavern and business has gone downhill recently, despite how it looks in there. Travelers pay top coin. Lulu sighed. Seems she was gonna have to find another way to sort this out. Good coin is one thing, but fast coin is better. Well, what do you know? 4 for the price of 1. A familiar, gravelly voice came from behind her, opposite the 3 men she'd been speaking to. The blonde man grabbed her by the wrist, pulling her to her feet. We need to go, he said, but quickly realized this would be impossible. 3 men on one side of them, 3 on the other, blocking their escape. All with swords drawn. Her knights in shining armor, not a single sword between them. Grandpa? Is that you? Wow, times are hard these days, huh? Lulu said, wiping the mud off her face with a broad smile. Drawing back his hood, he shook his head. And you speak clearly and articulately for a girl who drank as much as you. Seems you hold your liquor better than most men after all. Or is that just a show? Liquor? I didn't realize you could get drunk off apple juice. Railed tankard? Best apple juice this side of the kingdom as far as I'm concerned. She punctuated the statement with a hearty laugh, prompting strange looks from the three men who had come to her rescue. The older man joined in laughing. Well, at least at any rate, we only wanted your coin, but since you recognized my voice, I'm afraid I'll have to take more than that this time. Lulu shook her finger. Murder, huh? Mugging is bad enough, but murder? And what if I had my 3 boyfriends here to beat you to a pulp instead? That's right, 3 boyfriends. A look of horror spread across the faces of the 3 men simultaneously. One of them hadn't said a word yet, and now appeared even less likely to speak. The other 2 were equally at a loss. 6 against 4 aren't good odds, especially when you're unarmed. 6 against 4? That's not the count I came up with. Then again, I'm just the drunk girl. Let me try again, Lulu said, making a show of holding up all her fingers and putting them down one at a time. I'm gonna go with... It's clear that you think you're a very clever girl. However, you're only delaying the inevitable, he said, taking a step forward. I'm not the one delaying. You are. It's clear you've never killed anyone before, but you can't think of a way out of this. Your men are hesitating too, hoping you'll come up with something. You're really kind of letting them down right now. I've already brought up a ransom. If I'm some famous noble's runaway daughter, you and your mate could collect ransom and blow this little town. The men all stopped and looked at one another, not sure what to make of the situation. Evidently, her accusation ran true. They didn't really want to kill anyone. Ransom? The old bandit asked, sounding more like he was repeating the word than asking a question. 14 against 6, Lulu finally said, with a firm nod. Silence again as everyone stood, unwilling to retreat, but also unwilling to make good on their threats. 10, actually, a new voice said from above, aiming a bow down at everyone below. 5 other men, donning leather armor, all did the same. Just how long were you planning on waiting, Hansel? Lulu shouted up to him. Long enough to see if we were going to get a nice little attempted murder charge thrown in. Then I could raise the fee. It's nice to still see you still care, she said, putting her hands on her hips. Always. I figured the second best private investigator in all Estonia could handle herself, at any rate. The would-be bandits took a few steps back, clearly about to make a run for it, but were stopped by two spear-wielding guards on each side. Ah! I knew I counted it right, Lulu shouted triumphantly. That's the end of chapter 1. I'm gonna take a quick sip of water. The sunny's making it awkward for me to find a place to set my book without losing my spot here. Gonna take me a long drink of water. That feels better. Have to make sure that I keep my throat nice and moist. I know everybody loves the word moist. I personally dislike the word moist, but I do enjoy saying it odd ways. Alright, chapter 2. Mariana Cross was the embodiment of what it meant to be a true Estonian lady. Oh, I have a funny story about this name. She was surely beautiful with her golden blonde hair and emerald eyes, but it took more than beauty to advance to the highest ranks. She was talented, elegant, obedient, and her family's connections had already secured her at a high-status husband before she'd even grown into a popular woman. An arranged marriage with one of Estonia's most powerful wind mages was the highest honor for any woman, and almost every girl in the kingdom would have given everything they had just to live a day in her shoes. Mariana would give just about anything to live a day as someone else, probably anyone else. 5 minutes until it's showtime, a man shouted from down the hall. She sighed, letting her head fall back against the cushion of her chair. Careful, my lady, you'll ruin your hair and we won't have time to fix it. Lord Road will have our head For that, don't you know? The woman working on her hair and makeup said, her hands moving curiously as though it privileged her to work on some magnificent sculpture that would be around for all time. 2 women had been at her side at these performances for the past several years, experts in hair, makeup, and fashion on the surface. She knew full well their true purpose. They were her handlers. They prevented her from embarrassing Lord Road, from snooping in places he didn't want her to, and overall, just to remind her of her place. The dumb and pretty act, however, had served her well. Comfortable with the fact that they perceived singing was the only true ability she had set her apart from the others, she had whittled suspicion down little by little, year by year. Oh, silly me! How could I forget about my hair atop my very own head? Mariana said, giggling and reaching to pat her hair. Terribly sorry. Nellie only put her hands on her hips and shook her head, smiling at her out of pity. A hint of adoration in the scowl like a mother might have for a child who made a mess at the dinner table. Carrie was the kinder of the 2. Oh, don't you worry about that, my lady. We'll get you all fixed up prim and proper. That's what we'll do, or my name's not Carrie Bowlin. Well, that's certainly your name, so I'll take your word for it, Mariana said with an innocent giggle. Do you really think they'll hear you at the kingdom today? Nellie asked, grunting hard enough at the conclusion of the sentence that one might have mistaken it for a frog's croak. Oh, I can't say truly. Wind mage technology really is so amazing, isn't it? But it goes over my head a bit, I'm afraid. If my husband-to-be says it's possible, I believe it, Mariana said, tapping her chin. Careful with the makeup, Nellie scolded. Oh, right, Mariana squeaked. 2 minutes, the man shouted from down the hall. With these performances began, barely beyond her 13th birthday, it took all she had not to tremble uncontrollably and run away. Not so gentle encouragement from her family and would-be husband kept her in line. Obedient and outwardly eager to please everyone who counted on her to put up a good show. Today she was as relaxed as one might be when readying themselves for a summer stroll through a familiar market, or as though a surgeon might be when cutting into the flesh for the 1000th time. You're going to be wonderful, Mary, Carrie said, clutching her hands. A swift slap came from the much older Nellie before she could even respond, landing with a sickening thud across Carrie's round cheek. The slight, curly-haired redhead stumbled and nearly fell, looking back toward the 2 with blue eyes threatening to spill over with tears. Do you want to get us both killed, you little fool? Never refer to Lady Cross in such a familiar language. We are her servants. You overstep your station, Nellie said, her stoic expression hard, appearing no different from she would if she'd swatted a fly. Mariana quickly shoved the welling emotions deep back down inside her. As much as she wanted to intervene, this could very well be a test arranged by her husband-to-be. He'd done such things before. Only a year ago, he dressed one of his lackeys in rags and disguised them as a prisoner waiting to be transported to the dungeon. He called Mariana aside as they walked by, begging her for a bit of food. When she sneaked some scraps of her dinner to the man later, she quickly learned how dangerous trusting others would be for her. That night, Bronson and the pretend prisoner were both waiting for her in her room. He lectured her for hours about how a simple act like that could ruin the reputation of the Road family. He had tested her in such a way many more times since then. When these tests began, she'd be told that she'd passed. Later, she was left to wonder if these experiences were ever tests at all. Of course, all this was only taught her to appear obedient. Stop messing with those. Why are you so interested in knobs all of a sudden? No. Look. If you start slapping knobs and turning them, you're gonna have to leave. I like how I talk to my cat like he's a small child that actually listens to me. We might need, like, cat extraction services. I kept thinking he saw a spider at first, but I don't think it's a spider. I think he's just, for some reason, entranced by these knobs. He's such a weirdo. Okay. He's leaving now. If you try to remove him, he's just like, fine. Alright, so now I gotta find where I was before he started trying to turn knobs. Of course, all this only taught her to appear obedient. Inwardly, it made her want to rebel all the more and curse the invisible cage in which she lived. "I'm sorry, Lady Cross," Carrie said quietly, wiping her eyes. Mariana smiled and patted her on the head, saying nothing. "You two realize no one will be close enough to see my makeup today, right?" Nellie shook her head, wearing her signature frown, or frown-like expression. "Afterwards, you will meet some very important attendees. Your husband has—" "My husband-to-be," Mariana corrected, still smiling. Nellie blinked before continuing. "Your betrothed has instructed us to doll you up for the after-party, Lady Cross. He says you must look your very best, because you will accompany him. It was meant to be a surprise, but it seems you will not stop touching your face and hair unless I give you a good reason not to." "Lord Road is back from his travels? That's so wonderful to hear. He spends far too much time away these days," she lied. It was only news that could have made the day worse. The past few months were a welcome respite. She was still being watched at nearly every moment, but the prison was always a bit more bearable when the jailer was away. "I thought you'd be happy to hear that, but you still act surprised when you see him," Nellie said, intending it to sound lighthearted. Instead, it came out as what it really was, a plea. "Don't worry, I'll be too excited for him to notice a difference," Mariana said, before turning her attention to the opening door at the end of the hall. "Showtime," the man said, stepping inside and waving her out enthusiastically. On the stage, it was a sight to behold. Not indoors like she was accustomed to. No, this time it was on the roof of a specially designed building on the highest mountain in the kingdom, outside the capital. She could see for miles, and it seemed she was closer to the clouds than the crowd of people gathered below, who looked like ants from atop the cliff. Their loud cheers sounded more like whispers, lost in the heavy winds. Heavy winds that, despite their might, had failed to blow her stiffly styled hair. They mounted 4 large funnels, one to each corner of the platform, more massive than the prototypes she'd sang in front of before. Each one was manned by a wind mage, who looked down their nose at her in true wind mage fashion. This was their kingdom, and everyone else was simply living in it, despite their poor attitudes, unlike some mages in other kingdoms Mariana had heard of. Their priority was creating technology they could brag about to all the lesser people of the continent. Because of this, the people of Estonia suffered less poverty and lived better than the commoners in most other kingdoms. This created an adoration for the wind mages that they were all too eager to soak in. This entire spectacle was proof of that, after years of experimentation, all to project a singing voice at the same volume across the entire kingdom. Even her betrothed called it chief priority. "Lady Cross, please stand in the center of the platform," the man who guided her urged gently. "After that, you may begin whenever you're ready." Mariana stepped into the center and, after a deep breath, sang Estonia's patriotic anthem. She closed her eyes and wrestled to hold on to the rare joy she felt while singing, blocking out the entire world. She imagined she was alone in a field, singing to nothing and no one. No one would clap or cheer or praise her. No one would demand she sing certain songs in a certain way to certain people, only the feeling of freedom and joy. She would lock all of the feelings away for these few brief minutes. When the song was over, she stood silently, eyes still forced shut, her mind remaining in that field where her hair blew wildly in the breeze, unbound by the shackles of countless styling products, where she could stretch her chest out with her deepest breath without a corset, where nothing was real. "Lady Cross, that was... I know I'm not supposed to comment about your singing, but..." She opened her eyes, and her guide reappeared in front of her, his face streaked with tears. She smiled, but said nothing, though it seemed to be enough to satisfy the man. The roaring cheers, despite being so far away, without the help of wind magic to carry them, still reached her. After a broad smile of acknowledgement, the man guided her back down into the building, where Nellie and Carrie waited for her. "Now we must hurry and put you into your socializing gown. Lord Road is on his way to retrieve you as we speak," Nellie said, dragging her by the arm down the hallway toward her dressing room, as though the building itself was on fire and they were desperately trying to escape. No small part of Mariana wished that really was the case. Smoke-filled lungs would be a valid excuse to skip out on a party, after all. I stand in chapter 2. Let me get a drink of water. And then I'll tell you the story about how Mariana Cross came about. So, I don't know how long it was that Mr. Brogath wrote this book. Maybe a couple years? Something like that, year and a half. We had started to listen to Ghost a while before that. And there's this song. It's called Mariana Cross. You know, you go down like Mary on the cross. Well, Mr. Brogath thought Mariana Cross was the name. And he's like, you know, I'm going to name a character after Mariana Cross. I'm like, no. I'm like, that's not what he's saying. He's like, Mary, you know, Virgin Mary on a cross. And he's like, oh. He's like, I'm still going to use the name, though. So that's how Mariana Cross got to be. I can't even, like, say it without thinking of both at the same time. Well, it's a name now, so it was never wrong. But yeah, he misheard. I mean, like, it's not really misheard. It was Mary on a cross. He just took that as, like, you know, to, like, a first and a last name instead of 4 words forming a sentence. So, until Mary on a cross came to be. And then a pretty funny story. At least I think it's a pretty funny story. I do like how recently, hello, Daimki. Thank you for following. Hey, we met the follower goal, 210. Hooray! Oops. So we're on chapter 3 now. But yeah, I always think it's funny. Like, I never really got to tell that story. Oops. I accidentally hit the control button. That's what happened. And it was pretty funny. Alright, so chapter 3. A small sack of coins sailed through the air, knocking against the side of Lulu's face with an audible thud before tumbling into her lap. Hey, how about getting my attention before you throw something at my face? I swear, Hansel. She scolded the man across the table from her, though she had to admit it was a perfectly reasonable throw, and she should have caught it easily. Oh, did astonished chair songstress get under your skin? Your mind is clearly elsewhere, he teased. I'm just intrigued by what the wind mages can do these days is all. I haven't been back for long. They're still experimenting with large rooms when I was a kid, and only for political speeches, she said, attempting to change the subject. Are you sure? She's your type, he said, raising his eyebrows several times with a grin. So, you remember her type, huh? I'm listening. She's shorter than you, blonde with bright green eyes, and a nice, and I mean a really nice set of... Lulu eyed him up and down as he gestured with both hands clasping over his chest. You're awful, but go on. Lungs. I'm talking about her lungs, Lulu. Seriously, you're hopeless. I mean, you heard her singing after all. You know, I'm surprised they haven't run you out of this town by now, she said. Though I'm curious why you're bringing this girl up, lovely as she sounds. Because I knew you'd start asking questions, and I want you to stay away from her, he said, his tone hardening. Dare I ask why? She said, leaning forward, resting her elbows on the table. He frowned, leaning back in his chair with a heavy sigh. There you go. Telling you not to do something is exactly the way to get you to do it. But if I help you, then you'll only get yourself into trouble faster. Allow me to present an alternative. Hansel? I've been looking for a partner to take over half the business with me. I'll be returning to the capital soon, and there's more than enough work there to go around. No one's to question if I tell them I found you in a town I passed through. The identity we created for you is rock solid. Not that anyone would even question it. There's plenty of work to go around. Exciting work. Work you're cut out for. Leave the past in the past. If you were me, could you do that? Leave the past in the past? Just forget everything that happened and moved on? She asked. Hansel sighed and turned his gaze out the window's direction. You know I wouldn't. All the same, I can't help you throw your life away. I won't, in fact. Lulu laughed, lifting her elbows off the rectangular desk, returning to leaning back in her chair. Even if you know I'm going to do it anyway? If you know for a fact someone was about to plunge off a cliff to their death, would that make you any more inclined to push them if they asked you nicely? Not waiting for an answer to his rhetorical question, Hansel opened the drawer of his desk and pulled out a candle, placing it in the center between them. Just as he did, a knock came. Come in, Hansel said, stepping toward the fireplace with a long, rolled-up paper spill he used to light the candle. A familiar figure stepped inside, a blond man, around their age, the son of a would-be politician. I came by to thank both of you in person. It looks like... Lulu cut him off abruptly, turning her attention back to Hansel. Don't bother lighting a candle. I see no reason to continue this conversation any further if you don't intend to give me any of the information. Besides, I'm feeling a little hungry after all that exercise earlier. Hansel stood, placing his hands on his coat. I will join you then. Don't bother. This handsome gentleman was just about to ask me to join him for dinner. The man took a step back, sensing the tension in the room and wanting no part of it. Lulu took a step forward, grabbing the man's arm and pulling him outside, closing the door with an unnecessary slam behind her. I swear that man makes me so... she growled, squeezing her free hand into a fist and tightly clutching the man's arm with her other hand. Could you maybe not squeeze my arm so hard? He asked with a nervous laugh. She released her grip, threading her arm around his elbow instead. Don't get the wrong idea. I really am just looking for a dinner companion, nothing more. I'm Garrett, by the way. It doesn't seem you ever planned to ask me my name. A gentleman would offer it, Lulu retorted. To the drunkard burping in his face? Seems unwise. She grinned. Ah, you got me there. My name's Lulu. So, he said, nodding at her arm, what's the point of this if you're so disinterested? Oh, sorry, I just did it to tease Hansel. Is he or... Garrett started cautiously. Oh, no, you misunderstand our relationship, but that's normal. Also, not what I wanted to talk about today, she said, shifting the subject and pushing open the tavern door as they arrived. All eyes were on them when they entered, and the barkeep quickly spoke up to greet them. Free drinks for the heroes of the day? A meal sounds wonderful. My date will be paying if only the drink is free. I'll do no such, Garrett began, but sighed when he could feel the frowns aimed at him all around the room. 2 of the daily specials, then. Oh, you're such a sweetheart, Garrett. You really didn't have to. Garrett, finally getting a feel for his impromptu dinner partner's personality, simply laughed. I'm outmatched in wit, it seems. Come, let's have a seat and you may begin your interrogation while we wait. Lulu gave him a firm slap on the back and motioned for him to lead the way. Oh, you're just too modest, Mr. Stillwell. I don't recall telling you my last name, he said as he sat down. I don't recall telling you I didn't know your first, she said, grinning, putting her feet up on the table, leaning her chair so it balanced on the back 2 legs. I see. You don't waste time. Ask away. The goddess I heard singing earlier, I'd like to know her name, Lulu said with a wink. Oh, well, I thought everyone knew that. You strike me as someone who knows everything. I've been away for a long time. If you keep answering questions with questions, this'll take all night. Garrett shrugged. Fair enough. Her name is Mariana Cross. Lady Mariana Cross. Daughter of one of the most famous wind mage families. Not somebody us hard-working stiffs down below the clouds needs to worry about. Or am I missing something? So, is she disliked? Lulu asked. Garrett laughed, shaking his head. Oh, quite the opposite. She's probably the most adored person in the entire kingdom. After the little mess about a decade ago, the Cross family patriarch was the voice of reason for the king's council. He's credited with calming the people and preventing civil unrest. The only family with more influence over the king is the Road family. That's why. I see, Lulu said, nodding enthusiastically. She's marrying into the Road family. Though no choice of her own, I'm sure. Well, that may be true, but Lady Mariana seems to be head over heels for her soon-to-be husband. She gushes any time she's asked about him in public. Lord Road is a lucky man. Good morning, Foxtrots. Which Lord Road? Garrett tilted his head. You really haven't been here for a while, have you? A young lady appeared at their table, holding 2 bowls of potato soup and placing them down in front of them. She reached into her apron and pulled out 2 spoons, dropping them onto the table. Enjoy! Garrett and Lulu nodded. Lulu scooped up a heaping spoon and blew on it several times before stuffing it into her mouth. She grunted, pointing at the bowl with her spoon, signaling her approval. I already told you I haven't been here for a while. Which Lord Road? Well, there's only one Lord Road now. The old patriarch died several years ago, I believe. I believe it would be over 10 now. Lord Road's brother, Kelton, died in an accident with an airship a few years ago. The Road family has quite a few daughters, but as far as son goes, that only leaves Bronson Road, she whispered. Now that's suspicious, isn't it? Like suddenly all the other sons, passed away, put... See, you remember some of your prominent nobles after all. You say his name almost if you know him. Lulu smiled, quickly scooping up and gulping down another heaping spoon of soup. Not at all. I've just always found Bronson Road to be an interesting fellow. That's all. It sounds like the young Lady Mariana is quite in love with him. Last question. She shoves another 3 spoons into her mouth in rapid succession, prompting Garrett to take his first bite, having waited for the soup to cool. All right, I'm listening. What time does the next rail toward the capital depart? Oh, well, I suppose it should be just about any time. If you hurry, you could probably catch it. You're not going to jump on the rail on such short notice, are you? You haven't even given me your full name. Lulu Featherweather, and yes, I do. Fairyweather, huh? Your family's had a few wind mages over the year, which makes you noble, even if it's one of the lesser houses. In name only. Those wind mages lived several generations ago. The Fairyweather name will get you invited to the occasional party, but it's little more than dirt for influence. Just the way I like it. Thank you for the information and the meal. If your father is anything like you, I hope he wins. Actually, there's a big party in the capital tonight to celebrate their achievement today, at Road Manor. It starts in a few hours, I think. I need to get going, Lulu said, smacking the coin bag on her belt. Thanks for everything. Garrett stood quickly to his feet. Let me walk you to... No thanks, I know where the rail is. Oh, and you can have the rest of my soup, Lulu said, rushing toward the door. It was well and dark now, and raining. With a heavy step into the mud, she began her sprint toward the rail station. She'd taken it once already. The wind mage guiding it would stop and wait approximately 5 minutes before continuing on. She could hear it in the distance already, which meant if she sprinted, no, she'd never make it in time. It was about a 6-minute sprint. There was no point in being in such a rush, but there was no point in lingering here either. She'd found her opportunity and knew what she needed to do. Everything else until now was just killing time until she found an opening. Hansel couldn't hold her back anymore. Nearing her destination, Lulu couldn't believe her luck. The transport here had been nearly 7 minutes and was still waiting. There was a figure standing next to the open door, clutching a suitcase and holding an umbrella. He waved her forward. About time! Board quickly! I've already delayed long enough, came the voice of a man who appeared from inside the door. A wind mage, no doubt. The other man... See, I told you she was a fast runner. Thank you for delaying, my good man. You saved my sister's birthday from a certain ruin, came a familiar voice from beneath a hooded cloak. Hansel? Lulu said, a mixture of surprise and joy. Just get on the transport, the mage growled, turning on his heels and heading toward the back. Thank you, Lulu whispered, stepping inside with Hansel. The end of chapter 3. Time for another sip. I can't remember, how many chapters there are in this. It's been, well, however long it's been out. That's how long I read it. How long ago I read it. Usually I think there's about, 16 or so. Most of the time, 16, 17. Something like that. Whew. Alright, Chapter 4. Mariana gripped the frills of her dress tightly in her fists, doing her best to draw in deep breath, despite the cinched corset fighting against her expanding chest. Lord Rudd had been called away by one of the other wind mages on his way to meet her. She could have easily gone ahead to the party without him and met him there. However, that wouldn't do. He needed to be seen walking in with the gorgeous woman on his arm. The talk of the entire city after today. Estania's darling, Mariana shuddered. Not at the admiration, or even the attention, but the short leash that came with it. After a lengthy wait, a knock came at her door. Without waiting for her to answer, Bronson Road stepped inside. The recent month had aged him more than any other she'd seen. He was nearly 40, but never looked it. He was as fit as any soldier. Now, there were strands of gray visible throughout his black hair, and he donned 2 fresh circular scars on each cheek. "Oh my, what happened to your face, my lord?" Mariana asked, knowing it would be the response expected of her. "Don't fret over small matters. I was ambushed and pierced by a highwayman's arrow on the road through Valencia. They meant to rob me, but as you can see, I'm all right beside these scars. Perhaps some of our generals will find my new look to be rugged and masculine. Not so gentle and kind. What do you think?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. Gentle and kind? Hardly, she thought to herself. "If you don't mind their appearance, of course, neither do I. I just don't like the thought of your being hurt, my... Oh, wait. Wrong voice. "If you don't mind their appearance, of course, neither do I. I just don't like the thought of your being hurt, my lord. It pains me as though I've taken the arrow in your stead." He laughed. Whether it was out of amusement or because he couldn't sense her words weren't genuine, she couldn't tell. "I'd never put you in a danger of such a thing. The open road is no place for a proper lady. So long as your conduct casts me in a positive light, you are fulfilling your duty to me to the highest standards. Oh, speaking of which, I should congratulate you on your rolls in today's successful testing. Our wind mages reported your voice carried loud and clear to all corners of the kingdom." A proper lady. Mariana noted his change in language. In previous conversations, he never mentioned proper or improper playing a role. The open road was simply no place for any lady, he would say. This made her wonder if he perhaps met an improper lady in his recent travels. Mentioning it would only make him more conscious of the language he used. "They had not informed me of the results, so thank you for telling me. Will the wind mages be recruiting other singers to test?" He half smiled in a way that made Mariana feel as though he pitied her. "You need not concern yourself with the mechanics or goals of these experiments. You need only do what I have asked of you, which is to sing." Mariana nodded, swallowing her indignation as she always did. Her independent spirit threatened to roar out of these conversations, but she'd learned to keep it repressed. So far repressed that even a master manipulator like Bronson Road couldn't detect a trace of it. "Of course, you're right as usual. My overthinking it would only prove a distraction." Bronson smiled and nodded. "Let's make ourselves known to our guests." He turned toward the door, offering his arm to her, but she immediately accepted and walked with him in perfect step. Stepping into the crowd, they were immediately met with gasps and stares. It was kind of a shared fakery that Mariana detested, but one she understood very well and actively took part in. One simply couldn't afford to appear less interested than the person beside them. Men like Bronson, and they likely assumed her as well, would always gravitate to those who fawned over them the most adoring fans who would also likely be their most loyal sycophants. A decorated military man beckoned them over. Mariana knew he was a general, recognizing his insignia. Instinctively, she clung to her Bronson's arm tighter. He expected her to be intimidated by such a brutish man, after all, even if she found most of them boring and self-important, far from threatening. "General Ryland, so pleased you could make it," Bronson said in a raised voice as they approached, making sure it was he who spoke first. Another power play. "A party hosted by Estania's chief diplomat, Lord Road, and there's any chance I might not attend? Dear boy, other than the battlefield, there is no place I'd rather be. Speaking of which, about today's experiment," Bronson cleared his throat, scowling at the much older general, who immediately grew pale. "Mariana, why don't you socialize with the other ladies over there? The general and I have some matters to discuss that would only bore a lady." I will leave the two of you to your conversation. She smiled brightly, sinking into a deep curtsy before making her way toward a group of women on the opposite side of the room. They giggled and fanned themselves as she grew nearer. Again, her urge to sigh was nearly insurmountable. The general words, along with Bronson's reaction, only supported her working theory. Supporting the arts was likely only a front of the true intentions of the show she put on today. Otherwise, it would only make sense to invite other musicians and singers to take advantage of the magic and technology. Instead, they seemed only concerned with the mechanics of it. Normally, she might discuss this theory with someone, even warn someone of her suspicions. However, she was truly isolated and alone.